Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to be focusing on Chapter 9, all about crime and criminal justice. Here's chapter summary. Popular explanations for criminal behavior tend to focus on individual behaviors, while sociological perspectives employ a social structure approach. The Uniform Crime Report is the leading source of information on recorded and reported crimes in the United States. However, the number of crimes actually committed is probably much higher than the UCR reports. Categories of crime include violent crime, property crime, occupational or white collar crime, corporate crime, organized crime, and juvenile delinquency. Factors such as sex, age, class, and race play a significant role in who gets arrested and convicted for certain types of crimes. Biological explanations of crime assert that genes predispose people to act one way or another. Some psychological explanations attempt to link intelligence with crime. Functionalists use strain theory, social bond theory, and the subculture of violent hypothesis to attempt to explain why some people commit crimes and others don't. Conflict theorists suggest that people with economic and political power define as criminal any conduct that threatens their own interests. Feminist approaches focus on the intertwining effect of gender, class, race, ethnicity, and deviance. Symbolic interactionists use differential association theory and labeling theory to explain how a person's behavior is influenced and reinforced by others. The criminal justice system includes the police, courts, and prisons. These agencies have considerable discretion in dealing with crime and determining a punishment. Solutions to crime vary according to functionalist, conflict, and symbolic interactionist perspectives. By the time you're done reading chapter 9, reviewing the PowerPoint and watching this video, you'll be able to do the following. Define crime and distinguish between misdemeanors and felonies. Explain how juvenile delinquency differs from other types of crimes and offenses. Describe different types of crimes, including violent crime, murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery. Describe the nature of property crime from burglary to identity theft. Discuss workplace crime and occupational fraud. Distinguish between occupational crimes and corporate crimes. Define organized crime and list major illegal enterprises included in this type of crime. Discuss biological and psychological explanations of crime and explain the strengths and limitations of each approach. Compare functionalist, conflict, and symbolic interactionist perspectives on criminal behavior and explain the strengths and limitations of each approach. Describe the role of the police, courts, and prisons in the criminal justice system. And finally, discuss solutions to crime problems based on functionalist, conservative, conflict liberal, and symbolic interactionist approaches. Something to think about is that crime is a social problem. Increased news media exposure and crime-based television shows such as CSI and Law and Order, in addition to real-time crime shows like America's Most Wanted, contribute to America's fear of crime. When we think about the problems with official statistics, there are several problems that look at the accuracy of official stats on crime. The Uniform Crime Report, or UCR, is published annually by the FBI and is the leading source of information on crimes reported in the United States. The UCR tracks violent and property crimes, including how often certain crimes are committed. The Uniform Crime Report is limited in providing information on crime, though. Legal definitions of some offenses vary from state to state. Statistics only reflect crimes reported to law enforcement agencies or that police officers occur. The Bureau of Justice Statistics National Crime Victimization Survey, or NCVS, randomly selects households to identify crime victims, whether a crime was reported or not. The NCVS suggests that the number of crimes that are committed is substantially higher than the number that's reported. The National Crime Victimization Survey is limited as well. Responses are based on victim recall, which is often faulty. Respondents may not be truthful, and the NCVS focuses on personal and property crimes and doesn't measure workplace or other types of crime. When we look at defining crime and delinquency, there are differences. Crime is behavior that violates the criminal law and is punishable with fines, jail terms, or other negative sanctions. There are two components to every crime: the act itself and criminal intent, or mens rea. Criminal law is divided into two categories: misdemeanor and felony. Misdemeanors are relatively minor crimes that are punishable by a fine or less than a year in jail. Felonies are more serious crimes such as murder, rape, or aggravated assault that are punishable by more than a year's imprisonment, and in some states, even death. When we look at juvenile delinquency, keep in mind that children and adolescents who commit illegal or antisocial acts usually are not charged with criminal conduct, but are educated as delinquents by juvenile courts. Juvenile delinquency involves a violation of law or the commission of a status offense by a young person under a specific age, from 7 to 17 in most states. Juvenile arrests overall are decreasing. The highest juvenile arrest rates are for arson, vandalism, burglary, robbery, and motor vehicle theft. Most juvenile arrests are male, and the majority is Black or African American. Juveniles are processed through the juvenile justice system, which is based on the notion of diminished moral culpability on the part of the juvenile and is comprised of three major hearings: detention, education, and dispositional. Now let's look at violent crime. Violent crimes consist of actions involving force or the threat of force against others and includes murder, rape, gang violence, and aggravated assault and robbery. People are more afraid of violent crime than other types, since victims may be injured or killed and violent crime receives the most attention. The UCR, excuse me, looks at things like murder and manslaughter. So, murder is the unlawful intentional killing of one person by another. Murder involves malice aforethought, the intention of doing a wrongful act. Manslaughter is the unlawful unintentional killing of one person by another. Mass murder is the killing of four or more people at one time and in one place by the same person. Mass murderers tend to kill in areas in which they live, to be male, and to have psychological disorders or serious mental illness. Serial murders is the killing of three or more people over more than a month by the same person. It's often difficult for law enforcement to determine the actual number of victims of serial killers. The best known serial killers have been white males. One study identified four types of serial killers: visionaries, missionaries, hedonists, and power control seekers. More murders are reported in the South. Most murder victims are white males. Most murder victims and offenders are age 18 and over. Female murder victims most often know their assailants. Most murderers are Black males, and there's been a downward trend in murder rates in the 2010s. Rape, as defined by the FBI, is the carnal knowledge of a female forcibly against her will. However, both men and women are victimized by rape. There are different types of rape as well. When we think about rape, this is penetration in the vagina, anus, or mouth with any body part or object, including digits or fingers, without the consent of the victim. When we look at the different types of rape, we're going to focus on three of them. Forcible rape is the act of forcing sexual intercourse on an adult of legal age against their will. Statutory rape refers to sexual intercourse with a person who is under the legal age of consent as established by state law, which usually varies between ages 16 and 18. Acquaintance rape is forcible sexual activity that meets the legal definition of rape and involves people who met in a social setting. Acquaintance rape is often involved with alcohol or other drug consumptions. On college campuses, acquaintance rape sometimes takes the form of gang rape or party rape. Although reporting of rape has increased, about 60% of rape and other sexual assaults go unreported. Rape follows certain patterns in terms of gender, age, race, and region of the country. Most reported rapists are male. Most reported victims are female. Keep in mind that sexual violence is the most underreported crime in our country. Most rapists tend to be under the age of 25. Their typical victims are also under the age of 25. The rate of victimization drops after 35. Offenders and victims are usually of the same race and class. Most rapists are white, and most rapes occur in the South. Gang violence is on the rise. When we look at gang violence, about 20,000 violent street gangs exist, including not only street gangs, but motorcycle gangs and prison gangs, with nearly 1 million members who are criminally active in the United States. Illegal money-making activities include alien smuggling, armed robbery, assault, auto theft, drug and gun trafficking, extortion, fraud, identity theft, home invasions, and murder. Gangs are typically composed of young males of the same race or ethnicity. Gang activity and gang related violence have increased significantly. Intervention by law enforcement and the criminal justice system has had limited success. Two other kinds of violent crime included in the UCR are aggravated assault and robbery. Aggravated assault is the unlawful attack by one person upon another for the purpose of inflicting severe or aggravated bodily harm. The highest rate of aggravated assaults occur in the South, and most offenders are white males. Robbery is taking or attempting to take anything of value from the care, custody, or control of a person or persons by force or threat of violence and/or by putting the victim in fear. Robbery arrests are higher for men than women, and Black or African Americans have higher rates of arrest for robbery. What we see here is a picture of a gang. And when we look at gang and gang violence, understand, like we just talked about, that when we look at many gangs, they're typically going to be younger men of the same race or ethnicity. And when we look at some of the things that they engage in, we can see that they'll engage in things like robbery, assault, extortion, murder, even home invasions and trafficking of guns, substances, and even people. This picture is a depiction of a street gang. Now let's look at property crime. Property crime is the taking of money or property from another without force, the threat of force, or the destruction of property, and is experienced more by low-income households than higher-income households. Larceny theft is the unlawful taking or attempting to take property, with the exception of motor vehicles, and is the most frequently committed property crime. Most offenders are white, however, blacks are overrepresented in arrests. Arrest rates for males and female offenders are closer, with males committing just slightly more crimes than women. Burglary is the unlawful entry of a structure to commit a felony or theft. Burglary is divided into three categories: forcible entry, unlawful entry, and forcible entry attempts. Most offenders are white males. Motor vehicle theft is the theft or attempted theft of a motor vehicle, not including farm equipment, airplanes, motorboats, jet skis, and other types of construction or recreational vehicles. Most offenders are white males. And there's four basic motives for auto theft. That's for joyriding, transportation, commission for another crime, and profit. Identity theft poses a serious problem both in the United States and globally. Vast amounts of personal information, mishandling of such information, and computer savvy criminals lead to the prevalence of identity theft. Most identity theft victims find law enforcement agencies slow to respond, and resolution may take more than a year. Let's look at workplace and occupational or white collar crime. This refers to illegal activities committed by people in the course of their employment or normal business activity. Some researchers refer to this type of crime as occupational fraud. Banking, financial services, manufacturing, and government or public administration sectors are the most vulnerable to occupational crimes. There are three major categories of occupational fraud. Asset misappropriation refers to stealing or misusing of an organization's resources and accounts for almost 90% of occupational frauds. Corruption schemes like bribery, extortion, and conflict of interest occur when employees use their influence in business transactions in a way that violates their duty to the employer for the purpose of obtaining benefits for themselves. Financial statement fraud refers to schemes that involve the intentional misstatement or omission of relevant information in the organization's financial reports. Corporate crime refers to illegal acts committed by corporate employees on behalf of the corporation and with its support. Corporate fraud typically involves accounting schemes designed to deceive investors, auditors, and analysts about the true financial condition of a corporation. Securities and commodities fraud refers to activities such as Ponzi schemes and securities market manipulation by way of cyber intrusion. Healthcare fraud occurs when healthcare programs, including private insurance plans and government funded plans such as Medicare or Medicaid, are billed for excessive amounts, or when they are charged for health services that were not provided for medically necessary services. Mortgage fraud involves misstatement, misrepresentation, or omission of relevant information regarding a property or potential borrower, which is relied on by an underwriter or lender to fund, purchase, or insure a loan. Insurance fraud involves misuse of some of the nearly 1 trillion in premiums that are collected each year by the insurance industry. Mass marketing fraud occurs through telemarketing, mass mailings, and the internet. These cases often involve elderly victims. Money laundering is the process by criminals conceal or disguise the proceeds of their crimes or convert those proceeds into goods and services. Cases often involve drug cartels and other organized crime. Direct economic losses are immense as compared to the money lost in street crimes. Indirect costs include higher taxes, increased costs of goods and services, and higher insurance rates. Although personal injury and loss of life are typically associated with homicides and other conventional street crimes, deaths from corporate crimes such as polluting the air and water, manufacturing defective products, and selling unsafe foods and drugs far exceed deaths due to homicides each year. What we see before us is Bernie Madoff, who created this Ponzi scheme and scammed people out of millions of dollars. Organized crime enterprises include drug trafficking, prostitution, gambling, loan sharking, money laundering, and large scale theft such as truck hijackings. Organized crime thieves, because of demand for illegal goods and services, commit these types of crimes. Some law enforcement and government officials are corrupt through bribery, campaign contributions, and favors intended to buy them off. The FBI organized crime section is divided into 3 units: La Costa Nostra, Eurasian Middle Eastern organized crime, and Asian and African criminal enterprises. So now let's look at some of the biological and psychological explanations of crime. There are several biological explanations for crime and delinquency. One of the earliest biological explanations came from the positivist school, which created typologies to classify and study criminals. Cesare Lombroso, a 19th century Italian physicist, believed that some people are born criminals or atavists, people who are biological throwbacks to an earlier stage of evolution, with characteristics such as low foreheads and cranial capacity smaller than other humans. A later theory, the somatotype theory, asserts that mesomorphs, people who are muscular, gregarious, aggressive, and assertive, are more prone to delinquency and criminal behavior than are endomorphs, people who are fat, soft, round, and extroverted, or ectomorphs, people who are thin, wiry, sensitive, and introverted. Some contemporary biological approaches attempt to link higher rates of aggression in men to levels of testosterone or chromosomal abnormality, including an extra Y chromosome, but this research has produced no consistent findings. Other contemporary biological approaches suggest that violence is a natural and inevitable part of human behavior that can only be controlled by social organization. Some scientists say that violence is neither natural nor inevitable, but is the result of traumatic brain injury or some combination of brain injury and other factors. The cortex of the brain is most closely associated with violent behavior. More researchers have become interested in explaining criminal behavior from a genetic point of view. Psychological explanations of criminal behavior focus on individual characteristics. Some researchers examine abnormal personality traits in criminals and delinquents. Others have investigated the effects of social learning and positive and negative reinforcement. The most enduring psychological explanation of delinquency and crime seem to be the ones that bridge the biological explanations by linking intelligence and crime. Another explanation focuses on the link between aggression and crime. Now we're going to shift to the sociological explanations of crime. There are numerous functionalist perspectives on crime and delinquency, but 2 are of main focus. Robert Merton's strain theory is the proposition that people feel strain when they're exposed to cultural goals that they can't reach because they don't have access to a culturally approved means of achieving those goals. Conformity occurs when people accept culturally approved goals and pursue them without approved means. Innovation occurs when people accept society's goals but adopt disapproved means, for example, shoplifting, theft, and burglary, for achieving these goals. Ritualism occurs when people give up on societal goals, but still adhere to the socially approved means for achieving them. Retreatism occurs when people abandon both the approved goals and the approved means of achieving them. For example, a person who drops out of school. Rebellion occurs when people challenge both the approved goals and the approved means for achieving them and advocate an alternative set of goals or means. Control theory seeks to ascertain why people don't participate in deviant behavior. Some people who are constantly pushed towards deviant behavior, while others do turn to crime, have these outer or inner containments. The best known the best known control theory is social bond theory, which asserts that the probability of delinquency increases when a person's social bonds are weak and peers promote antisocial values and violent behavior. Social bonds consist of attachment to other people, commitment to conformity, involvement in conventional activities, and belief in the legitimacy of conventional values and norms. Some functionalists believe that a sense of anonymity is the root cause of violent crime. Others believe that violence increases when social institutions weaken and the primary mechanisms of social control in people's everyday lives become external. According to the subculture of violence hypothesis, violence is part of the normative expectations governing everyday behavior among males in the lower classes. According to the lifestyle routine activity approach, the patterns and timing of people's daily movements and activities are the keys to understanding violent personal crimes and other types of crime. Strain theory is often criticized for focusing almost exclusively on crimes committed by lower classes and ignoring crimes committed by middle and upper classes. Critics of social bond theory say that it's limited in its ability to explain more serious forms of delinquency and crime. Now we're going to shift to the conflict perspective. Theorists explain criminal behavior in terms of power differentials and economic inequality. According to Turk, crime is not a behavior but a status acquired when those with authority to create or enforce rules apply those rules to others. For example, we look at lawmakers, police, and judges. Having roots in the work of Karl Marx, the radical critical conflict approach argues that social institutions such as law, politics, and education make up a superstructure that legitimizes the class structure and maintains the capitalist superior position in it. People commit different types of crime based on their class position. Crimes committed by low income people typically involve taking things by force or stealth. Corporate or white collar crime usually is committed by means such as paper transactions or computer fraud. Some conflict explanations of crime and delinquency are based on feminist scholarship that focuses on why women commit crimes or engage in delinquent behavior. Scholars using a liberal feminist framework believe that women's delinquency or crime is a rational response to gender discrimination in society. A radical feminist approach is based on the assumptions that patriarchy or male domination over females contributes to crimes such as prostitution, which reflects society's sexual double standard. Social feminism notes that women are exploited by capitalism and patriarchy. Because most females have relatively low wage jobs, if any, and few economic resources, crimes such as prostitution and shoplifting become a means to earn money. Some recent studies have focused on the relationship between crime and the simultaneous effects of race, class, and gender. Critics of conflict theory say that they have not shown that powerful political and economic elites manipulate lawmaking and enforcement for their own benefit. The symbolic interactionist perspective emphasizes that criminal behavior is learned through everyday interactions with others. According to sociologist Edwin Sutherland's differential association theory, people have a greater tendency to deviate from societal norms when they frequently associate with people who tend towards deviance rather than to conformity. When more factors favor violating the law than not, the person is likely to become a criminal. Critics say this theory does not take into account possible connections between social inequality and criminal behavior. According to labeling theory, no behavior is inherently delinquent or criminal. It's defined as such by social audiences. The process of labeling is directly related to the power and status of the people who do the labeling and those who are being labeled. Sociologist Edwin Lamert explained labeling theory by distinguishing between primary deviance and secondary deviance. This concept is important because it suggests that when people accept a negative label or stigma that's been applied to them, the label may contribute to the type of behavior it initially was meant to control. That labeling may contribute to the acceptance of deviant roles and self images. When we look at primary deviance, this is the initial act of rule breaking, and individuals don't internalize the delinquent or criminal self concept. Secondary deviance occurs when a person who has been labeled a deviant accepts that new identity and continues engaging in that deviant behavior. Critics don't think that labeling theory explains what causes the original acts that constitute primary deviance, nor do they think that it adequately explains why some people accept deviant labels while others do not. Using functionalist, conflict, or symbolic actions perspectives, it's increasingly difficult to determine what types of criminal behavior may be learned through media portrayals. Now we're going to switch to the criminal justice system. When we look at the criminal justice system, this is a network of organizations, including the police, courts, jails, and prisons, that are involved in law enforcement and the administration of justice. The police are the most visible link in the criminal justice system. Four factors influence whether or not police will make an arrest. The first is the nature of the alleged offense or problem. Second, the quality of the available evidence. Third, the age, race, and sex of the alleged offender. And fourth, the level of the difference shown to police officers. Police officers have a wide discretion as to who will be stopped and searched and which homes and businesses will be entered. When we look at wide discretion, this is the use of personal judgment regarding whether and how to proceed in a given situation. The problem of discretion is most acute in that the decision to use deadly force. Historically, criminal justice personnel at all levels have been white males, but diversity on police forces is very slowly changing. Some departments have begun community policing. The courts are responsible for determining the guilt or innocence of people accused of committing a crime. Because courts can try only a small fraction of criminal cases, judges and prosecuting attorneys also have great discretion, particularly by way of plea bargaining. Some analysts believe that mandatory sentencing guidelines have removed some aspects of sentencing power from judges and juries and transferred it to prosecutors who determine which charges will be brought against the defendants. Punishment and the prisons is any action designed to deprive a person of things of value, including liberty taken by prison sentences, because of an offense the person is thought to have committed and is seen as serving four functions: retribution, social protection, rehabilitation, and deterrence. Although incarceration rates have declined in recent years, the rate for minorities is disproportionately higher than for whites. Jail and prison conditions often do little to rehabilitate offenders due to overcrowded facilities and physical abuse. Some courts have resorted to shaming penalties. Government spending on corrections has soared by 75% since the late 1990s. Today, many states and local governments contract with private companies to build and operate correctional facilities, also known as prison industrial complexes. The death penalty is a highly controversial issue. Overall, about 1,500 persons have been executed in the United States since 1976. To be constitutional, the death penalty or capital punishment must be imposed for reasons other than race, ethnicity, gender, and social class of the offender. Critics of capital punishment argue that it's discriminatory because people of color and poor people are at greater risk of receiving a death sentence than white, more affluent counterparts. People who have lost relatives and friends as a result of criminal activity often see the death penalty as justified. New Jersey does not have capital punishment laws. They were actually dismantled. So, is there a solution to crime problems? Let's look at the three perspectives. When we look at the functionalist or conservative solutions to crime problem, some functionalist approach suggests that it's important to identify the social pressures that result in high rates of deviance and crime if we're to reduce the number of crimes that are committed. One way to reduce crime is through community policing. Learning about current problems to prevent them from occurring again in the future is key to this approach. Critics view this as a form of social control and surveillance, which is wrongfully applied more often in low income and minority neighborhoods. Conservative political analysts typically focus on how to strengthen neighborhoods, communities, and society through the maintenance of a moral order that is rooted in strong social institutions. From a conflict approach, it would be necessary to reduce power differentials and or economic inequality in society to solve the problem of crime. According to a Marxist approach, crimes primarily may be viewed as a threat to members of the capitalist class who desire to maximize their wealth and power in society. However, critics say this explanation does not deal with the issue of why some wealthy people commit crime. Some branches of conflict theorizing and liberal political analysts look at race as an important variable that must be addressed in reducing crime. To reduce crime, racism must also be reduced. An important way to eliminate crime is to empower people by improving public schools, expanding job opportunities, and creating better housing. Critics say that funding for such programs don't exist. Furthermore, they say that the private sector, not the government, should be responsible for such developments. Symbolic interactionist solutions make us aware that any behavior that is learned, including criminal behavior, can be unlearned. The way to reduce crime is to teach people the importance of law abiding behavior and to engage in other endeavors that help to modify and eliminate criminal behavior. Critics say this approach does little to address the larger crime problems in society. Symbolic interactionists who use a social constructionist approach point out that different people have different realities about what causes crime, and thus it's necessary to listen to diverse voices to find out how we might reduce or eliminate crime. I hope that this was helpful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me. Don't forget, in the description box below is your extra credit question. All you need to do is answer it in the comment section below the video, take a screenshot and upload it for up to 1 point added to your final grade. And also don't forget it's due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Until next time, take care and be well.